Hello and welcome. The Year of Living Dangerously was one of Mel Gibson's earliest films, co-starring with Sigourney Weaver and Linda Hunt. While based on the real-life events of revolution in Indonesia in 1966, but shot in the Philippines and Australia, threats to the lives of the cast and crew added a dangerous dimension to the making of the film. In fact, director Peter Weir and the producers decided to quit the Philippines and move the production back to Sydney to complete the shoot. The teaming of Mel and Sigourney worked well, but the eye-catching, Oscar-winning performance came from actress Linda Hunt as a local video cameraman. The casting of Hunt's character, Billy Kwan, had been a lengthy challenge for Weir. Gibson was just 26 when he made the film, playing an Aussie journalist caught up in the crossfire of the revolution, violence and local politics. Only a year before, he'd co-starred in another Peter Weir film, the powerful World War I movie Gallipoli. Shortly after the film was released in 1982, Mel and Peter sat down and talked to me about their experiences shooting The Year of Living Dangerously and Hunt's casting and performance.
Peter, the casting of Linda Hunt in what is a very central role in the film was almost a desperation move in one sense. You'd been looking for so long. How much of a gamble was it once you had actually found a woman and made the decision to cast her as a man?
Well, I think it was pretty much make or break, really. I mean, the horror of horrors was the thought of a first screening and people giggling and sniggering and things. And that would obviously affect her. She was out front doing it, and affect the film. There was no precedent. There was no precedent in a film that I could, or any of us could find for this without it being, part of the story.
When the agent said, "Look, what about talking to this woman in New York?" How did you react to that then?
With humour. We were pretty tense, and so it was a good laugh for the morning. Her credentials were really excellent, but she was a woman. And then something stayed in the back of my mind, like, I've got to do something. I've got to pull a rabbit out of the hat here, because the character in the novel is so original, so rich. It's what had drawn me to the novel, and unless I had a cinematic equivalent, then the picture would sag. And but when she walked into the office in New York, and I'd forgotten, it was a morning of seeing 20-odd people, and Joe D'Augusta, the casting guy, said, "She's here, the one." I said, "Oh no, how embarrassing to drag someone and waste their time." In came Linda, very short, very charming, very feminine. I said, "I'm sorry, I hope I didn't embarrass you." She said, "No, I wish I was a man. I love the script. Kwan, I understand him." Mm. And we talked, and I said, she said, "Could you change it to a woman?" Which was a reasonable question. I said, "No, too many repercussions." I said, "Could you play a man?" She said, "Oh, I don't know. So let's have a test." We did, and I thought the test worked. She was less sure, but then...
What did you actually get her to do for the test?
Several improvised scenes, plus one or two from the screenplay. And I walked around with her as Hamilton, so we'd have the height comparison, or roughly Mel's height. And also to see a man with her. And the makeup was dreadful. I mean, she looked like she was going to a Chinese fancy dress party or something. Awful wig and everything. But something was coming down the barrel of that little videotape camera. So I said, "Let's do it." And she said, "I'll only do it on one condition, if you truly believe I can do it. Because if you don't have confidence, then I'm going to lose mine."
So what was it specifically that convinced you that she could do it?
It's hard to when your intuition's working, to think back and analyse it. But I would say it was a kind of resonance, and I thought, what is it? One, she's a very good actress. Two, there's an inner quality which comes out. Now, with some people, actors, let's say, who are wonderful people, in quotes, or have a wonderful quality, the camera often just doesn't pick it up, But with Linda, just in those little moments where she'd sit there smiling enigmatically, it was working. And I thought, no, it's enough to have a go on. And I was pretty desperate, double or nothing.
Guy Hamilton, right?
Right.
Billy Kwan. I did a lot of film work for Potter.
With getting her into the film and with the development of the roles, is her character intended to be on an equal level with Mel's and Sigourney's, or should she have? I mean, to me, she was so outstanding that I was transfixed by her performance. Really, I loved it. I thought she was marvellous. So, I mean, how did you see it initially? Did she have a sort of stronger role in the film overall?
It was always very dominant, because the novel had a narrator, and the narrator was decided. No, the narrator is another journalist called Cook, who's a shadowy figure that's not developed, but he gave the novel its momentum. And with that character gone, you know, you needed a focus, and Kwan, in a sense, combined the narrator with the her own character, his character. So there we have a very dominant character in the script. But as those rushes began to come through, we watched it, and I thought this is going to be one of those performances. And to some extent, the part grew, I guess.
Well, Mel, of course, you were the one who had to work with Linda. And make it work, of course. What was she like to work with? I mean, did she have reservations once you were out there shooting about being a woman and achieving the transition?
I think she always felt that pressure, which is good. It was good for her to feel that. I sometimes get those terrible feelings of little doubts, and it just puts the pressure on you to sort of do something and try and think it out and try and get the best results. Puts you on your mettle. So, yeah, it was fine, and there was never any problem to do with identity or anything. I always thought of her as a woman when we did it.
I was going to ask you, did you think of her as a woman?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah, it's...
all the time?
Almost. Well, occasionally you'd catch yourself doing things like slapping her on the back or you know,
beauty, mate.
Yeah, or something, you know, like that. And then you'd have to say, oh, I'm sorry I said that. Or, like, you could say things to guys that you wouldn't... And occasionally something like that would just slip out. But most of the time, she was Linda.
And how did she take that? I mean, did she want to be treated as a man or as Linda Hunt, an actress?
Oh, I think she likes to be treated as the woman she is, and she likes being a woman. So,
But I mean, I'm talking about when she's actually on the set there working, when she is Billy.
For all that stuff, my word, she likes to get into it, and she's good technique. You see, I think she can do all that, still be a woman, and sort of do it on the surface, and that's camera technique, that's acting technique.
You mentioned the kind of pressures that are involved, and of course shooting this particular film, as the film which was shot in the Philippines, though it's set in Indonesia, there were some pressures that you, I guess, hadn't really anticipated. Mel, let's talk to you about it first. Working over there, what kind of pressures did you feel when there was threats being made and that sort of thing was happening?
Well, I didn't feel too threatened. I don't think anybody really did. There was only these kind of niggling feelings of things happening in the background, and it just put everyone a little bit on edge, didn't it? And the only problem with all that was, well, of course, you're in a foreign country. Communication is a barrier in some cases, and things moved a little slower. The heat, you know, the sort of climate of the place was a little oppressive. It was very wet all the time. But that feeling of maybe not taking it too seriously, but at the same time, who knows, was detracting from the working situation. It was kind of
the first thing that went.
Yeah, and that's not good.
I understand the Filipinos were very keen to provide you with all the sort of defence systems that you could possibly get.
But the idea of driving to work in a tank was too much.
What, that was one of the offers, or?
It was getting close to that. When we got to the detachment of palace guards around the set, I thought, well, you know, you just imagine saying, would you move the palace guards out, get the machine gun out of the shop?
But that never actually happened. They were some of the offers that the Filipino people made to you.
In all seriousness, it was they'd been wonderful people to work with and a fabulous crew, and they were so disappointed. It was a really 50-50 job, and they liked us for that. It wasn't like an American unit coming in with all their cast and crew and using them as a facility, or just the extras. We had Filipinos in the cast and key roles, and the crew was pretty well 50-50, and we, you know, good friends. And they were heartbroken, and there are people very expressive of their emotions, and I can still see those faces in the corridor of the production office, and we're all running out suitcases and, you know, abandoning ship. Don't go, Peter, can't you, please, you know, we will kill them, we will kill them.
So why did you, I mean, there has been a number of stories, or versions, if you like, as to why you quit seemingly earlier than you intended. Why did you quit, and how much of an effect did it have on the eventual film?
Well, taking the second part first, it cost us money. It cost us somewhere up toward $500,000. And that was like buying an expensive insurance policy. The money was spent on rebuilding kampongs here in the city and various sets that were constructed. But I thought it was cheap, you know, considering someone's, you know, life. Going back to the first part, I was involved, of course, at all stages of these threats, and I assessed it as serious. And the reason I assessed it as serious was the very reason the authorities were saying it's not serious. That is that it was amateur. There is an active Muslim underground and whatever organisation there is, we know through various reports back here. But they have a very set way of doing things. They're like the PLO or the IRA. They'll do something, then claim it. They'll even speak to you. You can even go and speak to them. But this note had all of the feeling of the amateur. And my assessment was that it was Iranian, and there's several thousand students there. The way they combined the Muslim faith in the note and their belief in Allah with socialist slogans, you know, like you in the name of Allah, desist from your socialist, capitalist activities. You offend the Muslims of this country and the Muslims of Indonesia. Leave or you will die. You know.
So was it really a threat of death?
Oh yes.
There's no mucking around about it.
Then the telephone calls began, and one of them was given to me. I had a call at my hotel, and a simple old trick. It's funny, you know. It's like a movie, but the call was an Arabic-sounding voice because you got so used to the Filipino accents, and it was something like, "Hello, is that Mr. Weir of Pan German Chemicals?" I said, "What? Is it Mr. Weir, please? Could I speak? He's with Pan German Technical Chemicals." I said, "No, I'm Peter Weir, but I'm a filmmaker. Thank you very much." You know, and I thought, they know where I am. What a dumb thing to do, you know. And I went down and checked with the hotel staff, is there any other Peter Weir staying here with Pan German Technicals? No, you are Mr. Weir, you know. And then you get so paranoid. I then sort of thought, I've got my address there and all that in the registration form. So I told them, look, I incorrectly filled out the address. Could I have the form back? And got the form, and it was very...
So in film terms, I mean, the decision was taken, you got out of there, you came back here, and as you said, it cost you $500,000. But just in film terms, did it in fact leave you short in terms of footage to cut into the...
Yeah, I was short a couple of wide shots. I always missed them.
And that was all?
That was all, yes, finally, you know, all credit to the art department. They worked round the clock, and we then had container strikes, and a lot of our props didn't turn up, but they rebuilt these sets for us.
Identification, Guy Hamilton in Jakarta, lead in for story. Exclusive interview with the leader of the Indonesian... This is Guy Hamilton in Jakarta for ABS.
Mel, can we come back to and talk to you about your co-star in particular, who's a favourite? I've seen two of the films, Alien, of course, and Eyewitness, and I love to work in both. What was Sigourney Weaver like to work with?
She has a lot of energy. It was good working with her because she it kind of demystified the whole American actor-actress thing with all of them. And they're all three totally different. They approach their roles from totally different places. But the one thing that they do have in common is this kind of energy thing. I think it's something to do with the fierce competition over there or something, because it's relatively easy here for a job compared to what it is over there. I mean, there's millions of them. So, and I was pleasantly surprised to find, well, not pleasantly, but just not surprised either, but it was kind of good to see that they go through the same processes in a way and have the same problems and all that, and it just demystified that whole sort of American sort of thing that I was really curious in watching them.
Why can't you learn to love? I gave you my trust. So did Jill. That's why I gave you those stories you think are so important.
Of course, the character that you play is an Australian reporter. Now, he's set back in 1966 when, today, I suppose, 16 or 18 years later, he would be doing slightly different things over there with the television equipment that's available now. How did you go about researching the character?
Well, that was, I had a couple of months to look at that. And of course, there was the novel, which is a great little piece. And there were a lot of men working here now in Australia who were there at that time. And I talked to them, I read about them, sort of verbatim sort of reports, like little files. That the props guy, he was an amazing guy, just went around and sort of talked to all these guys, and it was all down as they said it. You know, it had all the all that stuff typed up. It was really sometimes hard to read, but very interesting. And they helped enormously, those guys. They were really cooperative. And talking to them in person, and just reading up on the history and that sort of thing. Mostly reading.
And as a role, was it a harder one for you than Mad Max?
Yes, I would say so.
Why?
Well, Mad Max is kind of like your built-in formula role. A very two-dimensional kind of character. That has little difficulties too, let me tell you.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
You're being hard on yourself.
Yeah, but this was a little deeper, a little closer to moi. And it was one of those roles that you go from the very beginning to the very end. You're nearly in every damn frame, so you've got to have something going that you don't get tiring or boring. And that's
Did you feel that I mean, looking back now, you've obviously seen the film completed. Were you happy with the portrayal of Guy Hamilton, the Aussie journalist?
Yeah, I think I got the journalistic thing. I've been told by journos that I had it, so that's a great. That's relief time, isn't it? That's
it was
wonderful.
like meeting the Gallipoli
guys
veterans.
from, yeah.
They were the scary ones with that
Yeah.
film, and with this one, it was with the people like Mike Carlton and others say it was accurate.
A ship left Shanghai a few days ago with arms for the PKI. Look, I'm not telling you this to give you some fantastic scoop. I just want you to save your life.
If you let the story break, everyone will know it came from her.
Lee, I can't let a story like that just lie.
You have changed.
Guy, you can't use this.
Then you shouldn't have told me.
There's been a bit of argument as to whether the film is in fact a political thriller with some elements of romance, or a romantic thriller with a background of politics. Peter, what were you trying to set out to do, or were you trying to cover all ground?
A good film.
Right.
A good film. Those elements underwent so many different shifts of emphasis, not just through the drafts, but through the cuts on the picture. But I think we got the balance right, finally. I really don't think, I'm not good with those kind of one-line summings up. I think in maybe older phraseology, like a good story, you know. Sure, there's all the elements that you discussed there, but I just hope that the balance is correct. Can
I say part of what I feel about it? I felt that the romance could have been a lot stronger. Is that a fair criticism, do you think?
Having just finished it, I can't say, you know, yes, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I'd be still in the cutting room.
Now, what about you? Do you feel that perhaps, in retrospect, the romance could have been brought forward a little bit more, in fact, that there could have been a little bit more passion in it and a little bit more jeopardy, if you like, in the potential outcome?
I think it was emphasized far more in the screenplay, in the film, than it had been in the book. It was a very kind of minor thing in the book, and it didn't have anywhere near that passion in the book.
That's true.
We tried to go for that. There was more emphasis on it, without getting graphic. Because I don't think it needed it.
No,
because you're not looking at just two people getting together. You're looking at manipulation. You're looking at two people being brought together by a little third figure, and him sort of living his real love for this woman vicariously through the outer shell of someone he wants to be, who he is beautiful inside, but it's Cyrano de Bergerac, you know, the puppet, Christian the puppet.
Beauty and the Beast.
You know, it's all that sort of stuff. So that love thing becomes very much more complex, and it takes on a whole different tone.
See, I think, yes, for me, I think it became, as we worked on it, a film about love, as against a love story. And part of that look at love, if you like, was romantic love, and quite interestingly set in a different context, as part of a relationship that you can have, not, you know, the Mills and Boon or the chocolate box thing, or just pure passion, but that it is one way that one expresses love, you know, between a man and a woman, and, you know, therefore fitted into Kwan's view of love. But the emphasis, you know, I mean, there's drafts that high. Because every type of film. Well, between the four of us who worked on the script, David Williamson did the greater number of drafts, but I've got about 11. And I think there's about 3 that got snipped into small bits and made other drafts. It was very hard to catch.
Well, Peter and Mel, thank you very much indeed. All the very best with the film, and I suppose that once we've got this one out of the way, you two will be back together doing another film.
Geez, I hope not.
Impossible.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
While Mel was born in the US, he spent his teenage years and much of his 20s growing up in Australia, hence the Aussie accent. Over the decades, he's been named the sexiest man alive and voted one of the 50 most beautiful people in the world. Now in his mid-60s, Mel has resurrected his career after a few bumpy years involving controversies over drink driving and other incidences, including derogatory comments about Jews and women. He has since apologised for those outbursts. Mel is expected to appear in a number of TV and film productions during 2022-23, including a new Lethal Weapon movie.